Right. So the last time I was giving you the whole overview of different faculties and what can be done in practical terms, and um, and how we can approach this kind of self study. And it's actually a training, it's a technology of consciousness. When we speak about the faculties, it's a technology. Yeah? It's something like how it functions. It's very different. In some way it is different, not very different. In some way it is different from the verities or from the qualities such as sincerity, yeah? Or humility or courage or peace or generosity. These are not the faculties of the mind, yeah? Or they are kind of qualities of the soul, of the psychic being, you know, of the innermost involved being, which are shining through. And these technologies, these major activities of consciousness, such as seeing, hearing, speaking, thinking, feeling, and even consciousness of the body, all of these faculties are technological in a way. Person can be perfectly acting, perfectly thinking like a robot, like a very highly sophisticated computer, but can be very ruthless and very, how to say, not compassionate and void of any generosity or anything of the kind, or goodness. Have nothing to do with goodness. You remember all these movies, what we saw about the artificial intelligence, which is very rough and tough with the human beings, destroying all of them because it's not feasible in its own view. So this is the technology. Technology has very little to do with that higher or deeper soul qualities. Yes. So we can, unfortunately, we can develop such a robot, such a human being, void of psychic qualities, which would be very efficient killer and destroyer of all, you know, following its own ideal, choosing one ideal and following it, and killing others, as it was done in many times in totalitarian regimes. If you look at them, what they do, they have an idea and they follow it, and you notice that they lack exactly that innermost qualities of the soul. This is something interesting to observe. Yeah? So we need both. We need these qualities of the soul and we need the technologies. We have to be very precise in actions of consciousness. That's what we are addressing. And we need to charge them or illumine them with the presence of the innermost qualities of the soul. So we have to be sincere in our mind. We have to be sincere in our speech, yeah, in our feelings and emotions. So that sincerity has to illumine all the qualities, and then we become perfect. If we are not sincere in our mind, speech, feelings, emotions, even in our body, we are not perfect, even if we are perfectly acting. Does it make sense how I combine these two? Yeah? So this would be the major topic of these gatherings and meetings, how to combine these two. First of all, to look into the faculties, how they act, what they do, how we can master them independently, as it were, and then how to make them a part of this divine creation. Or let us say simultaneously, let us not separate them. I'm separating them because mind is working like this. Mind wants to know clearly what is what and how it connects. And so I'm acting mentally now, trying to explain these two major fundamental foundations of integral yoga. If these two are there, they were known as Dvipad and Chatushpad in the Veda. Dvipad is the Jivatma, unborn self, and inborn self, psychic being, their relations, because psychic being is nothing but projection of this unborn self into the midst of our time and space, which forms this being, around which all these faculties are grouped, because this is the quintessential representative of the Purusha, which is never born and never entered this manifestation. And Chatushpat is our physical, vital, mental, and supramental nature, which has to be gathered around this Dvipad. So if we combine these two, we have a fullness of manifestation. It's in the most simple language, which we can find. Yes, Dawn.
I was just 30 seconds ago going to ask you, and you just answered it. I was going to make a request that as much as possible, as we're exploring the integration of the faculties and the qualities, to be reminded that the core necessity is to bring forward the psychic and to awaken to the self. That's always so much. Yeah.
Absolutely. This is the most important, but at the same time, the faculties are also important, and they have a very, vague or unclear relations to the extent that's why it was mentioned as Dvipad and Chatushpad. That's why Sri Aurobindo also separates spiritual and psychic transformation. So these faculties is our instrument, our embodiment of Purusha. And the functionality of Purusha depends on the psychic, but also depends on the capacity of these faculties to function. So they have to become self-aware of the Purusha, so to say. So these two, if they are working together, then we have a holistic view. So we can train our faculties, we can examine them from the point of view of consciousness and see how they could help that inner consciousness to come to the front, and how to become totally aware in our activities, in our thinking, aware of the inner being, in our feelings, in our seeing, in our hearing. So this would be the result. The dubious part of this connection is already expressed in Aitareya Upanishad, and Aitareya doesn't speak about psychic being, and this is quite interesting. There, the Purusha was formed by Atman, by the self, which was at the beginning. It pulled Purusha from the lower waters. So there were two stages of creation. First, they were made the locations or the worlds, the upper and the lower ocean came into being. And in between there was space created, there was earth and heaven. Heaven became the bottom for the upper ocean. The earth became the top for the lower ocean. And in between there was space. Then he looked at these worlds, Atman, and thought, may I have the dwellers in the worlds. The worlds were there, but dwellers, the consciousness which will dwell within, was not yet projected. So he pulled out of the lower waters Purusha and heated it up with his consciousness, concentrated on it. And he, Purusha, being heated up, broke forth. So how he broke forth? His mouth broke forth. From his mouth, the speech came into being. From speech, the fire, Agni, was born. His nostrils broke forth. From his nostrils, the breath, prana. From the breath, wind came into being. His eyes broke forth. From his eyes, vision, seeing. From the seeing, the sun came into being, the light. The light was the result of him wanting to see. Yeah? His ears broke forth, from his ears hearing, and from the hearing space came into being. Because space is the result of him wanting to comprehend himself in all the varieties. So all of these, one by one, came into being. These are the faculties. And then they plunged into the lower ocean of inconscience. And they were tormented there by hunger and thirst. Now think about hunger and thirst, the lack of being and the lack of delight. There was nothing for them to be dwelling in. And so they cried to him, bring for us the abiding place where we can dwell, our living body. Where is our body? There is nothing. We are in this ocean. And he brought them a cow, first a horse. They said it's not enough for us. It's good, but it's not enough. He brought them a cow. They said it's good, but it's not enough for us. And then he brought them Purusha, man, the human being. And they said, it's perfectly done. And he said, enter him now as your abiding place. So the fire became the speech and entered his mouth. The wind became a breath and entered his nostrils. The light became the vision and entered his eyes. The space became hearing and entered his ears. And so he was reassembled in the individual form. But what is interesting is that these universal faculties are now in the individual form. We are all individuals sharing these universal faculties. As you see, we reassemble them in our individual focal points. We are focal points of that one Purusha, universal Purusha, viewing himself from different perspectives. I look at you and see myself in a different reassembling gathering. So it's me in a different perspective, as it were. And you look at me and see yourself in a different assembling line. We are kind of from different focal points of time and space. We view Purusha differently in all his infinite varieties and qualities. But this individual, which was reassembled, where is psychic being? And I will tell you, there is a kind of thought which comes to me over this long period of studies of the Upanishads, that it is this psychic is something which is growing, evolving, because that is that Purusha, he wants to be here in this individual form. He is not yet totally here. He is represented only through the faculties yet. And they demand the being, and this being is growing here, growing, and they are pulling, these faculties are pulling that transcendental being into this manifestation slowly by activities. So the more conscious they are, the more psychic will grow. This is the answer for me today. So this is the relation of the faculties and the psychic being. I hope it was useful.
Perfect. Perfect. Thank you.
Beautiful.
I'm joining Charles and wow as well. But Vladimir, I had this understanding also that when Mother came out of this pause of the divine, when he wanted to project, and then he kind of paused, thinking, "I'm going to lose myself in that oneness." So but that energy came out, and that was her, and then she plunged in us, like saying, it's going to be my representation in you. So the spark of that psychic being, psychic entity, that was her coming in as a reminder. Just please correct me if my view or my understanding is wrong.
Yeah, the spark is that representative of that focal point of the self in this kind of which is the truth of the divine actually, which is with all those qualities we want to reveal. These qualities, if we exercise, we bring more and more the presence of the divine into the actions, and these faculties are also helpful. I'm coming back to my thinking. Sorry, maybe I'm not answering your question. I can hear it already that I'm not following you. But it is that spark which has to become a flame and which will become the full light, revealing the divine here in this individual framework. This is the importance, because he wanted to be many. That's the purpose. Bahusyam, may I be many. How the Supreme can be many if he alone is? It's not an easy task. How to become many if you alone and you are true, and he wants to be many true ones, not just toys to play with and to discard them at the end, as it is now understood in the Advaitic vision. That we play with these toys, he plays with his toys, and then he discarded them, and then again creates the world and plays with the toys, but he's still alone, one, and the toys are many. They are not him. No, he wanted these toys to be him, totally him, not just partially him, fully him. And this is something not easy to achieve. Him in his infinite multitude focal points relating to himself in all the varieties, multiplying, as Mother says, the bliss of existence, because he has the bliss, the ananda of identity, but he wanted to have the ananda of unity. That ananda of unity, as Mother says, it's an additional ananda, additional. He wanted to have more ananda, more bliss of himself. And that's why he wanted to be many. That's why. And it is possible. In a way, Sri Aurobindo says it is possible. So we are following his thinking.
Well, I suppose the highest compliment I can give you, Vladimir, is after this session, I realize more how infinitesimal my understanding is and how much
Well,
more to know.
there is much more to know for all of us. We are all here to learn, and there is so much more. And it is a real knowledge. It's not a knowledge of kind of mind or understanding even. It is something like, I don't know what it is. It's a state of being. Yeah. Remember to be, as you say. I love that. Every time I think, such a good thing. Remember to be. You forgot to be. Be real, be truthful, be yourself. Great. Okay, lovely. So it was kind of enthusiastic and great. So I will close with mantra. We are out of our time. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santo Niramaya Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Hare Om.